Tonight on One News, bombings in Ukraine as Russia begins a military operation. The first blast of a new war and the new warnings from Russia. What we know about military action on the ground and frantic diplomatic talks to limit the fallout. Anti-mandate demonstrators forced the Prime Minister to leave a Christchurch school before things get violent between parents and protesters on Kura grounds. Why police were so concerned about the escalating anger. And welcome to Phase 3. As daily COVID case numbers almost double overnight, the new rules around isolation and testing if you're exposed to the virus, and advice from those who've already caught it. Kia ora, good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news. Explosions are this evening echoing across Ukraine as Russia launches a military operation in the country's Donbas region. Russian President Vladimir Putin is warning there'll be consequences if other countries interfere. These pictures are from the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, about 6 hours' drive from the capital Kyiv, and show multiple large explosions in the far distance. World leaders are reacting as we go to air. US President Joe Biden saying Putin's chosen a premeditated war that will bring a catastrophic loss of life and human suffering. One News correspondent in London and New York is standing by with the very latest on this breaking story. First, Europe correspondent Daniel Faitala.
Russian tanks and trucks have been heading into Ukraine's border. Tonight, Russia's president says they're now going to cross the red lines, what Ukraine and the West has feared for so long. Just 2 hours ago, Vladimir Putin announcing what he calls a special military operation to carry out the, quote, demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine to end 8 years of war in the east. He says clashes between Ukrainian and Russian forces are inevitable. Many in Ukraine knew it was coming tonight. Russia has just evacuated its embassy in the capital Kiev. There's been a huge cyber attack on government and vital infrastructure sites, and Moscow suddenly banned civil aircraft from airspace around northeastern Ukraine. In this late night address, Ukraine's president solemnly warned an invasion would cost thousands of lives, but he also issued resolve, speaking directly to Russia.
If they try to take our country away from us, our freedom, our lives, the lives of our children, we will defend ourselves. And when you will be attacking us, you'll see our faces, not our backs, but our faces.
Russia also knows the West is united in opposition.
This is a perilous moment, and we're here for one reason and one reason only: to ask Russia to stop. Return to your borders. Send your troops and your tanks and your planes back to their barracks and hangars. And send your diplomats to the negotiating table.
Earlier, New Zealand took to the world stage to condemn Kremlin moves.
Russia's continued efforts to undermine the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine represent one of the most significant risks to international peace and security for decades. The impacts of such a conflict will not be confined to Europe.
US intelligence shows around 200,000 Russian troops are in invasion-ready posture on Ukraine's borders. Ukraine's army is some 250,000 strong, armed with weapons from Western allies it's been building since Russia's last incursion in 2014. It could be a bloody conflict, feared the worst in Europe since World War II. In Moscow earlier, President Putin was laying a wreath in the tomb of Russia's unknown soldier, respecting his war dead, at the very moment he was preparing to order more into battle.
And Daniel's joining us now live from London. Morning, Daniel. What do we know about what's happening on the ground in Ukraine?
Well, Simon, this is exactly what Western leaders had feared for weeks, even a month now. We don't have a clear picture exactly just how Russia is attacking Ukraine, but we are hearing reports of a number of explosions across the country, including in capital Kyiv. Now, we do know that there are at least 30,000 Russian forces just north of the capital's border in Belarus, and we also know that they're part of the around 200,000 Russian soldiers in attack posture on Ukraine's borders. But we don't know if any Russian forces have physically gone in yet. What we do know is that the airspace around the country has now been shut down, so a long journey for foreigners who are still there wanting to get out.
So Vladimir Putin has started what he's calling a special operation. Did he say anything about longer-term plans?
well, did make a few points in his address. He did say he has no plans to occupy Ukraine and that the Ukrainian people would be able to choose freely who runs the government. Now, it's long been thought that Putin's grand plan is to destabilise the country to the extent that pro-Western government fails and that he can install a pro-Russian government. Now, whether this attack plan is designed around that is yet to be seen.
In London, Daniel Faitawa, thank you. All right, let's go to One News US correspondent Anna Burns-Francis, who's in New York, where the UN Security Council has been holding emergency meetings. Anna, the UN Security Council, as I said, just meeting. What have we heard from that?
That's right, Simon. That meeting wrapping up just a short time ago. There's been a steady stream of diplomats walking past us here outside the UN headquarters this evening, making frantic plans for how they're going to tackle this tomorrow, what communications they're going to have. This was, of course, the third emergency meeting in as many days. But tonight, some very harsh barbs traded, particularly between Ukraine and Russia. Ukraine's representative, Sergei Kurtslitsia, telling Russia that he thought it was absolute rubbish, that this was not a war. Take a listen.
Because it's too late, my dear colleagues, to speak about de-escalation. Too late. The Russian president declared a war on the record. Should I play the video of your president? Ambassador, shall I do that right now, or you can confirm it?
Mr. Kurtslitsia telling Russia's ambassador he could pass on a message to his boss that there's no purgatory for war criminals. They go straight to hell instead.
Just after midnight where you are, any reaction yet from President Biden?
Yes, there has been. He's obviously been watching and waiting for developments in Ukraine. A late-night statement issued here saying this was an unprovoked and unjustified attack by Russia and that Russia alone would be responsible for the death and destruction that this war brings. We are expecting, he says tonight, his thoughts and prayers are with the people of Ukraine. We are expecting tomorrow morning he will meet with G7 leaders and then hold a press conference where he will tell the world what America plans to do from this point on. We've heard about these threats of economic trade sanctions for many weeks now. It hasn't been enough to dissuade President Putin from taking this action. President Biden can only hope now that the actual follow-through and imposition of these sanctions is enough to change the course of history.
In New York, Anna Burns-Francis, kia ora. Well, back here, there's been a second day of...
Tonight, war in Ukraine. Russia launches a military attack from all sides. Explosions are heard and the first casualties are reported. In just over an hour, New Zealand moves to a new phase of response to Omicron as case numbers surge to more than 6,000. And the Prime Minister forced to retreat from a school visit. And angry anti-mandate protesters clash on Kura grounds. Good evening. Explosions are echoing across parts of Ukraine after Russia launched a full-scale invasion into the country. There are reports of missile strikes in major cities, and already there are reports of casualties. President Vladimir Putin is urging Ukrainian soldiers to lay down their arms and go home as Russian military troops move in. Channel 9's Karianne Greenbank has this report.
Ukraine waking to war. In the capital Kiev, blasts break the night sky and sirens sound as Russia begins its invasion, launching airstrikes at targets across the country. A missile hitting an airport in western Ukraine, while at an aerodrome in the south, a man points to the destruction, saying there's a crater behind me still smoking. The streets out of Kiev choked with cars as families escape, heeding the warning calls. You might be able to hear that siren now, actually. So as well as the explosions, we've got a siren that has just started. It's been a really surreal morning, actually. While residents try to get out, tanks roll in from the Belarus border. Sparked by words the world had been nervously awaiting,
мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Vladimir Putin, in a televised address, announcing his decision to conduct a special military operation in Ukraine's Donbas region. The aim, he said, to protect its people from genocide and to stop the Nazification of Ukraine, with this chilling warning for Ukrainian soldiers.
В том числе и граждан Российской.
We urge you to lay down arms immediately and go home. Russia's response will be immediate and lead you to such consequences that you have never faced in your history. The Russian president pulling the trigger as the United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting imploring him not to.
I have only one thing to say from the bottom of my heart. President Putin, stop your troops from attacking the Ukraine. Give peace a chance. Too many people have already died.
Ambassadors from the US and UK also making urgent pleas.
This is a perilous moment, and we're here for one reason and one reason only: to ask Russia to stop, return to your borders, send your troops and your tanks and your planes back to their barracks and hangars.
We are here tonight to call on Russia to avert war.
Earlier this evening, Ukraine's president revealed he had called Mr. Putin.
Результат – тишина.
The result was silence, he said. Speaking in Russian and directly addressing the people of Russia, Volodymyr Zelensky made an 11th-hour plea of his own.
Россия не хочет.
If the Russian leaders don't want to sit with us behind the table for the sake of peace, maybe they will sit behind the table with you.
Вам говорят, что Украина может.
And when you will be attacking us, you will see our faces, not our backs. But the appeal fell on deaf ears. A couple of hours later, the Ukrainian leader recording this video, saying the country was launching its own defensive measures and urging people to stay calm and stay home. Police are now clearing the streets, those who have nowhere to go taking shelter in underground metro stations.
Well, let's go now to our Europe correspondent Daniel Faitawa. How have European leaders reacted?
Well, EU leaders have expressed shock and horror, condemning Vladimir Putin for bringing war back to Europe. Now, today they will look at a package of targeted and massive sanctions that will weaken Russia's economic base and capacity to modernise. And that is a sentiment that has been echoed here in Britain. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is right now holding emergency meetings where he says that he will deliver Russia the most severe sanctions they have ever seen.
And Daniel, how will this affect New Zealanders?
Well, oil prices have already surged and they will be felt right around the world, including New Zealand. What that means is prices will go up, so expect pain at the pump wherever you are. Now, also here in London, Nanaia Mahuta, New Zealand's foreign minister, is visiting. She is heading to Geneva, but before she left, she issued a statement saying New Zealand stands with the people of Ukraine. She says Putin's actions are a violation of international law, and she is calling on Russia once again to cease all military operations in Ukraine.
Thanks, Daniel. That's our Europe correspondent live from London. And here's what happened when Russia first launched its military operation in Ukraine, as captured by a CNN team in Kiev.
It's going to be more than just a coincidence. I can hear rumblings right now.
Matthew, is it safe where you are?
Pinpoint. Yeah, I think it's relatively safe at the moment. Look, I've got a. Oh,
there's another one.
I've got a flak jacket right here. Let me just get it on.
So Matthew Chance is live for us in Kyiv, Ukraine. Matthew, we're going to stick with you. Matthew is on a roof in central Kyiv, he's telling us, and just for the first time, just moments ago, you witnessed live on this program explosions. Again, he doesn't know exactly what those explosions are, but he says it's the first time that he has heard them since he has been in Kyiv.
Well, to other news now, and at midnight, the country...